Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone, your journey, our passion, and by Chevrolet. Chevy runs deep.
This is Autoline After Hours with John McElroy, episode 160 for August 10th, 2012. Old Blood and Guts. Watch Autoline After Hours live at Autoline.tv every Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time or 2200 GMT. You can subscribe to this podcast for free by searching for Autoline in iTunes, Stitcher, or by following the links on our website. Hey, back in the studio. Peter, it's good to be back here.
Yeah, it is, except last week's show was great, wasn't it?
It was awesome. And the week before that was
Bob.
awesome.
Yeah.
So, yeah, being at the GM Design Studio, I've gotten so much feedback about that show. All good. And the Bob Lutz one, going out to his farm. That was...
Well, no one's ever done anything in GM Design.
I know.
Of video nature.
We created history.
Yes. Thanks to Ed.
Right.
Yeah.
And we've got Michelle Krebs from Edmunds.com. Great having you here,
hey,
Michelle.
My first time doing this.
Now, is that right? This is your
Yes.
first time on After Hours?
Yes.
I can't believe that.
Yes.
I'm stunned because we've had you on our other shows
Yes,
a lot.
exactly.
In fact, well, wait a minute.
And my colleague, Jessica
No,
Caldwell, was on.
you have done this because you won the fantasy draft.
Well, yes, that was a
So,
special after hours.
The special After Hours, because Mark Phelan and Scott Burgess went through everybody's voting, and clearly, Peter, these guys don't know what they're talking about.
I think they're brilliant.
But they chose you as having chosen the best lineup of executives for
Well,
your
part
car
of it had
company.
to do with the fact that I picked Larry Page from Google. Is my chief thinking officer. So.
That's pretty good. Yeah. Well, Michelle and I were just up at the management briefing seminars this week, and I found out that you drove the same kind of car that I did up to Traverse City.
Mine was a brighter color.
We both had Camaro Zl1s, and I was actually supposed to go up in the new Cadillac XTS, which I have not driven.
Oh.
And, wait a minute. Are
I
you the
drove it
one
the
who
week before.
crunched it?
No, I did not.
Well, somebody broke it because they called here and said, hey, we can't get you that XTS, so I got a Zl1 Camaro.
Oh.
And I did not look forward to driving it because the roads can be really bumpy.
Right.
Usually super high performance cars like that are really rough riding.
Right.
I thought it was brilliant. I thought that car was fantastic, especially the suspension.
It was good. It was good. I still, the XDS would have been a nice leisurely drive up there, but it was fun, and it sure got attention. I stopped at a gas station, and some guy dashes over and he says, my wife and kids in the car, but I had to come over and see this. And so it does get a lot of attention. And I had the bright orange one with the black stripe on it.
Yeah, well, I had this sort of nondescript silver one, and it looks mean. But I was blown away. It's got that magneto-rheological suspension, MR suspension, and instead of getting beat up all the way there and back, I mean, yeah, it's stiff, but I was knocked out at how good it handled and how well it rode.
Who did GM develop that with? Was that, because now it's accepted as one of the suspension developments of the last decade.
Well, Delphi
Right,
first
yeah.
developed the technology.
Right.
This goes back a decade ago.
A long time ago.
At
It was
least a
on
decade
Cadillac
ago.
first
But-
and Corvette, right?
But,
Right.
Audi,
I think the Alante might have been the first one
yeah,
with it.
Audi's using it now, right?
Ferrari's using it, I
Yeah.
know for sure, because
Right, that's
Cadillac's advertising that
Right.
fact. But yeah, it's really cool technology, and
It's just brilliant technology.
right. And in fact, we should mention too that in 2 weeks' time we have Al Oppenheiser, the chief engineer on the Camaro, coming on the show, so we can get into all the detail then of how it all works and everything.
Gee, I think if GM was listening, they'd maybe have me in a ZL1 between now and then.
They should.
Although I'm driving a CTS-V coupe and it's black, that black metal flake color with black wheels, and it is just the baddest ass car, man.
And it's beautiful, I think.
It's
And it's
stunning.
so Cadillac.
yeah,
So Cadillac.
it's sinister, and they're gonna have to take it because I'll get one of those tickets where they don't even bother writing it. They just put you in handcuffs, put you in the back, and say, you know, you're all done, because it's just awesome.
And it looks good.
Yeah, you put your foot in, it just spins the tires. It's just like just turning in this little road here. I was probably not the best place to nail it, but you know, you just can't. And you know, you're going 75, 80 like in
No time.
no time. So very, very satisfying car.
Well, you know, I had questions because the Zl1 is essentially a $60,000 Camaro, and I thought, man, I just don't see people laying out that kind of money, especially because the interior of the Camaro is just not quite there. But they've done some nice things to this interior that, you know, are not good enough. It really needs a new interior. But yeah, I could buy this being a $60,000 car now. They put this Alcantara leather on the dashboard because right now the dashboard is just a wall of hard plastic.
Right.
So that Alcantara, I think it's Alcantara. I'm guessing it is.
Yeah.
But it softens up. I mean, not just to the touch, but visually softens up the look of the IP. And like I said, I'm just knocked out by that car. Did you have a manual?
Yes. Yes.
Dang, because I had an automatic.
Oh, okay.
And I would have preferred to have the manual.
Yeah, it's always
we
more
can
fun to
trade
have.
tonight. You can take mine, I'll take yours.
They took mine away today, I'm sorry.
Okay. But you really are liking the CTSV Coupe.
Oh man, you know what's not to like? I mean, it, you know, first of all, I think we agree, or I've said it, and I know you probably agree, that the CTSV Coupe is going to go down as one of the designs, and it will still be great 20, 30 years from now.
I believe that's the case.
I think it's a stunning car. And maybe the black doesn't show it off as much as, you know, like a gunmetal, but still. In full Zoot, you know, V configuration, it's just awesome.
So listen to us. Here we are raving about this GM product, and I understand, Peter, that Dan Akerson
old blood and guts, Dan Akerson gets up in front of a town hall meeting with GM today, and
this is all GM employees?
Yeah. By the way, Dan just bought 25,000 shares of GM to show that he believes in the company. That's fine, but he gets up in front of his employees and proceeds to run down yet again. Now, this guy's done this repeatedly, run down his product development people by saying that, oh, well, our engines and transmissions aren't the best and we need to make them the best. And I'm sitting to myself, here he is kicking these people in the teeth again, and look at what they've got. Look at what they do.
It did before he got there.
Yeah, and look at the engines that we're talking about in the CTSV and the Zl1 and the ZR1. But forget about the performance engines.
Right.
Look at their small direct injected turbo motors. They're 1.4s. They're 2 liters. These are superb engines. I don't know what this guy's talking about. I
don't know what he's talking about, and I don't know if any of you guys have been in the Cadillac ATS, but they've got a new brand new, totally new 4-cylinder engine in that thing. That's awesome.
And, you know, he went on and on. We're still dealing with leftovers of the old GM culture. Well, you know, GM didn't really have a culture. The last time they had a culture was in the 60s. But, you know, I'll sit here right now and say this guy is the wrong guy at the wrong company at the wrong time. He needs to go. And unfortunately, the board of directors are a bunch of stumblebums who, you know, they don't know any better. Now, you know, we're just coming off the heels of Joel Olonick exiting. We just had Joel on the show.
A couple of weeks ago. We had no inkling that he was about to get fired.
Yeah, and we will never know what the real deal is. There's a lot of hand-wringing about the soccer deal. But
it wasn't one thing.
No, it wasn't one thing.
No, this has been leading up to it. I mean, Joel, you know, the term rock star CMO exists beyond the auto business. I mean, there are rock star CMOs, and then there are guys and girls that just push paper around. Joel's a rock star CMO. Akerson doesn't like that. That's not what he likes. You know, he said, we're no celebrities here. He said, well, the fact of the matter is GM has one of the largest media budgets in the world, and you're dealing with media and Hollywood types. And yeah, you are a rock star whether you want to be or not. Now, you know, GM says, well, he moved money around to make this deal.
When hasn't that happened?
Yeah, it's
I
not-
sort of remember some skunk works of project.
It's
I'd have
not
given him a medal.
Yeah, it's not
fire him.
not against the law to. I mean, it goes on all the time in this town, this business. You know, if you got a big project, you got to, you know, you call up somebody.
Look at us last week, and we're in the GM Design Center, and there's that Pegasus that Bill Mitchell had built with the Ferrari engine in it that I'm sure did not go through purchasing and
Yeah, no, I mean,
requisition.
so-
No, I remember days under Jim Perkins at Chevrolet. Remember there was talk about getting rid of, I think it was the Corvette, and he had a little Skunk Works project going.
Look at Chevrolet Racing throughout the 60s. Everything that we talked about with Jim Hall. And,
Well, that was all backdoor stuff, but, you know.
but I'm saying that was all hidden. The guys on the board did not know about that. When you go back to how the Pontiac Fiero got developed,
Right, that
all
was
that
another.
money was hidden. I mean, come on, this business thrives on bold people beating the system to do what's right.
Yeah, so that is not why he was
He didn't put the
exited.
money in his pocket. Joel did not steal money from the
Well,
company.
that's why he wasn't exited for moving money around. So, and GM has handled it poorly. I mean, if GM PR, unless they're just been ordered not to do anything, because if a proper PR, they'd say, this is what happened, this is why. Well, instead of that, there's no real reason, so all the hand-wringing comes. So there's a Bloomberg story, there's more information, there's this and that. But forget about Joel. I think Joel will land somewhere. He's too good, too talented, but this Akerson guy, I think it's run its course.
And by the way, they've got some serious sales and marketing problems. I mean, their inventories are building here in the U.S. First of all, the whole Europe thing, where's the action?
Now,
on
if you want to
that?
sit here and tell me that we exited Joel from the company because we were underperforming the market, you know, in sales.
Right.
For the product lineup they have.
But guess what? Because I looked this up. In the last year, GM has lost 1.8 points of market share. Ford's lost 1.2.
Yeah.
And I don't see Farley getting the heave-ho.
Well, except that their inventories are lower. GM's inventories
But
are
I think if you look at the GM inventories, it's mainly on the pickup trucks. No? Because the trucks, as you know, those
Well,
truck plants go
yes.
down later this year, so
yes,
they've built
but
up
they've been using
inventory.
that as an excuse
Well,
for
I
2
know.
years.
Well, have they built up too much inventory in truck? But is it true across the
I mean,
board?
oh yes. If you look at, we took a look at some of the numbers, and they are increasing.
Okay, but is it a sales problem, or are they deliberately overproducing to make
Well, that
the
may be,
financials
and
look better? And that's
that
not
may
what the
be.
product development people do.
No.
Right,
So
and that may be there is some.
At any rate, we'll never find out the real reason Joel was asked to leave or mutual.
Unless he ever tells the whole story.
Unless, you know, the mutual.
He won't do that, not for a couple of years.
No. It could show up in a book somewhere.
But I got to tell you, I think Akerson has really run his course. I mean, this guy, to get up in front of those people and say they're not building world-class stuff, I mean, this is about the 4th time since he's taken
Well,
over.
look, and I've said this on the show before, too. I've got friends who are engineers at GM. They're not happy. The morale is not good there.
Of course
and
it
it's
isn't.
because management is telling them they're not doing a good job. And, you know, I think the strongest thing at GM right now is its product.
See, it's the thing. It's
the best it's ever had.
It's the best they've ever had. It's the only thing they've got.
And they've berated these people for saying, oh, you know, if you stand out by the doors at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock, you'll get bowled over by everybody rushing out of the building to go home.
Well, that's what he said.
Yeah.
Akerson, way back.
Right.
I mean, it's just a train wreck.
I don't get it, because that's not leadership. And, you know, here's a guy who keeps talking about his Navy career and how he was a captain. And, boy, I wonder what his old shipmates have to
and
say.
think about this. Think about when, and you can say what you want about, you know, what Bob Lutz contributed to GM or not, but remember when he was brought in, immediately raised the level of the product development people, the engineers, the designers, the people who he reminded the company of what they were in business for.
Yeah, and Rick Wagner had no idea that would happen, but that was the biggest byproduct.
Right.
Yeah, and what did Bob Lutz do the first thing, his first month there? He had Ed Welburn get him an office in the design staff. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he re-energized and reminded people why they're there.
And remember what happened in the Zarella days. It's sort of what,
Oh, well, that
we're
was
saying
just...
here.
Well, you know, I said from the very beginning, how did Akerson get that job?
Well,
and the other board members that got appointed.
He was
remember,
the guy
was
that
task
answered the
force.
phone. And I joked about it, but it was just like, well, we need he's over there, and the board members aren't really capable of making any radical decisions. So, he was just like the next guy up. And he may have been good in other places, I don't know, but I think he's a total misfit here.
Well, things are starting to not go well. You mentioned Europe, Michelle.
We're not getting the solution there.
I don't see any end game in sight here whatsoever. South America is starting to unravel for them. I was shocked to see that revenue and profits dropped in North America. The buck's got to stop someplace.
Well, and I think one of the big issues that GM's got, it had dominate, it was dominant in China, dominant in South America, markets in South America. The target's on their back, so they've got some challenges there.
Not to mention, Volkswagen,
right.
Hyundai, Kia, Ford.
A lot more players.
Toyota's not out of the game at all. I mean, very interestingly, up at the Traverse City Conference, I think, was it Anthony Pratt? No, it was Jeff Schuster made the list of what car companies are going to be the biggest in 2018. It wasn't Volkswagen, it was Toyota.
Yeah, right.
GM was fourth.
Of course, they took out, the way he calculated, they took out
He doesn't count
he doesn't count Wuling.
But I think even if you count Wuling, GM might be fourth.
Yeah, I got to go back and look at that. But
that was pretty interesting to me, what he came up with.
Well, and it was interesting, the order was pretty much, they're all in the ballpark.
Mm-hmm. So I guess we should mention the obvious about Dodge exiting.
I was just going to ask about that.
Well,
Dodge and NASCAR. Dodge dropping out of NASCAR.
Yeah, I mean, it was inevitable. When Roger switched to Ford, it was just inevitable. There are no teams. Well, first of all, everyone forgets this. I'm the only one who said it repeatedly. Sergio and his minions, they don't care about NASCAR. They don't get it. They don't want to spend the money for it. And Ralph, Ralph's a good guy, and he's a true believer, and he's
Ralph Gilles.
Yeah, right. Ralph Gilles. We had him on here, and he's not going to say anything about that. But it's known that Sergio and his henchmen don't like NASCAR. They don't care. So once Penske left, in order for them to get a frontline team, they would have to do one of these.
Spend more money.
Like $30 million. And, there was only one organization that stepped up and said, well, we might be interested, and that was Michael Andretti's Andretti Autosports, who's done sports cars, but mainly Indy cars. But they were contemplating doing a NASCAR program. And when they gave, Michael and Mario, they don't come cheap, and they always go big or go home. And when the Chrysler guys saw their number, they said, we're done. So they're done.
And remember, when Ralph was on the show here earlier this year, he kept talking about the need to have a top-rated team. He didn't want to go to somebody else and take years to build the program up. So
yeah, I mean, there's Hendrick with Chevrolet, there's Richard Childress with Chevrolet, there's Joe Gibbs Racing with Toyota, and there was
Michael Waltrip with Toyota.
And Michael Waltrip, and then there was Penske with Dodge, and that was it. So,
and ironically, they're doing really well this year. Keselowski, I think, has won 3 races. He's in the chase.
Keselowski's a star.
He's a stud.
Yeah. And Ford's going to be, Ford's been going against Hendrick and everybody with just Roush. Now they're going to be loaded with Penske. But, Dodge is out. And it'll be a long time before we see them again. Well, and they've started the Viper program in the American Le Mans Series. So they've got their hands full going against Ferrari, Porsche, BMW, and Corvettes.
Yeah, well, hopefully Ralph can take all that money and dump it into that program.
Yeah, well, it doesn't work that way, but I'm sure the ALMS program is maybe a third of what they were spending in NASCAR.
Right. Well, hey, why don't we take our first break? We're going to be joined by our colleague, Karl Brauer. And Ben, let's go and give some thanks to our friends at Bridgestone. So, Karl Brauer, are you there?
Hear me? Can you hear me? Are you there?
Yeah. We got you in the studio here.
Yeah, well, as far as anyone knows, right? It doesn't look like it's like my house back there or anything. So.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So, Karl, what you doing these days?
Oh, I'm trying to fight the good fight. You know, we started a website, brand new website, back on March 1st, and we hit 100,000.
Well, give us the name. What's the website?
Oh, okay, I guess that helps. It's totalcarscore.com, and everyone wants to know what it is or what it's about, and there's a 4-word description that's pretty straightforward. Rotten tomatoes for cars. It's basically an industry assessment. It's all the sites that we feel have a meaningful rating system out there, and there's not many. There's only about 9 right now. We've got a couple more we're going to add pretty soon. But there's roughly 10 systems out there that are meaningful rating systems, but instead of going to all 10 of those sites, we convert them all into a simple percentage, and then we stick them, we average them across all 10 of them, and you get the total car score. So you go to one location, and you know how good the car is in comparison to its primary competitors in the segment. And it's very easy. The site's really easy to navigate. You can see the whole segment. You can list it by total car score, and you can just kind of see what the industry thinks of these cars in one shot.
Well, give us an example of what you're talking about.
Well, let's say that the economy cars are out there right now. So you've got things like the Fit and the Soul and the Cube and the XD and the Yaris. And they've got scores coming in from, Consumer Guide and Edmunds, and, there's crash test scores on them. And so we just take these systems that are already out there, and if they aren't already a 1 to 10 or a 1 to 100 system, we convert them into a percentage. If there's 9 categories with 5 stars in each category, then a perfect car would get 45 stars, right? But most cars aren't perfect. Actually, none of them are. But they get 37, they get 35. So you just divide 35 by 45, and you've got a percentage from that from that website's rating system. And if you do it for 10 different systems, then you basically are getting a sense, and you do it for 2 cars, and you do this for 10 different sources. You're going to know how those 2 cars kind of rate in comparison to each other, based on the industry's assessment. What does the industry as a whole think of this vehicle? And my mantra has been that nobody sits at a computer anymore and says, you know what I need? I need more information. Man, if only I had more information coming out. Nobody says that. Information is no longer the problem. Controlled, filtered, useful information is the problem. And so that's the whole idea. That's why Rotten Tomatoes is successful. That's why Total Car Score is going to be successful, because you can go to one location, and then I still have all the links. So if you want to dig in and see all the sources that gave that Total Car Score, I've got all the links to go right back to the original sources. But if you just want that kind of top level, I call it the sticky note answer, it's there. And that's usually what most people want. They just want to know, is this not a bad car? Does the industry like this car? Okay, that's all I needed to know.
Are you still driving or testing cars yourself, or you're just sort of aggregating and adding up what everybody else has said?
Well, we do both, because there's always context. You always want to have a context on all. I would never want someone to see that number and just totally stop there. So we have the number, and then we have the text that puts it in context, and it says, this is why the car is doing well. Maybe its crash test scores are really good, and the rest of the scores are good. Or maybe it's got a less than stellar total car score, and it's because there's an area that the car could be better at. And so we always have a model review to go along with the cars, and that's based on our own personal experience. Because again, I want context around these. I don't want people to just look at the score and be done. I want them to look at the score, and then if they want to know more, why did it get that score, be able to tell them. And that's when you need to drive the car yourself. We also do road tests and comparison tests. I'd been mentioning to a couple of your producers there that we did the ATS comparison test, and I think we're the only ones out there who's got one right now. But we've got the ATS going up against the 335 and the G37, because I drove all 3 of them back to back during the ATS's press introduction a few weeks ago. And
so what do you think? What do you think of the ATS?
I mean, you guys were talking about General Motors' product, and I wanted to jump in, but I couldn't at that point. But you're absolutely right. It's unfortunate that something like Akerson would be out there denigrating them, because the product has never been better from General Motors. And anyone who gives the ATS a chance that is otherwise I don't buy Cadillacs, I'm a BMW guy. Well, you should at least drive the Cadillac, because you might be a little surprised. You might be a lot surprised. And we rated it the best car out of the 3 simply because it's essentially equaled the BMW driving dynamics, and among other things, Q. I don't know if you guys have played around with it and all, but Q is in the leading in-car system right now for infotainment and music and navigation and the whole thing. It's the best one out there, and everyone else has to catch up.
Wow, very interesting. Yeah, we had the guy that developed Q on the show early in the year, And in fact, he just got some big promotion. I think he's going to Korea or China or something. He's going to, he got a big promotion out of doing a great job with that Q system.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how the ATS, comes up, because really they will have to sell it to all new buyers, because there aren't any Cadillac buyers unless they already own a CTS and they want to get an ATS for another member of the family. This is GM marketing. Well, the ad campaign, I think, is really excellent, and they're targeting people who wouldn't even give Cadillac a second glance. So,
well, remember when Joel was on the show, he said, all we want to do is be part of the conversation.
Right.
So that when somebody drives up and their friends see them pull up in an ATS, they don't say, what the hell are you driving that for? They go, oh yeah, I understand why you'd buy that car. He said that's their sole goal with it.
Yeah.
So I liked hearing that, because to me it showed a lot of realism. Instead of pounding on their chest, we're going to show everybody, they're meek and humble. And
well,
Joe's
a smart guy, so he's that was exactly what they need to do.
And on that ad campaign, which launched during the Olympics, Edmunds did some measure. We always measure ad campaigns. Consideration. People came to our website, like 500% increase in, now granted from a very low level, but to look at least check out the ATS.
Yeah, no,
we'll
it's
kind of watch
it's an excellent campaign, and they spent the money and it shows, but I think they've got more than a fighting chance, because I think the reviewers will say, it's good.
The thing, though, is still the image.
Sure.
I drive a BMW.
It takes, but it'll take a decade, another decade. Now,
Yes.
Cadillac's been at this for 12 years.
Right.
And they've come a long way. I mean, 12 years ago, if you said to me, you're going to be driving something like the CTS V Coupe, I'd say, yeah, right. So, but it's going to take another 10 years.
Exactly.
And it harkens back to look at the job that Lincoln has.
Right.
Oh.
Yeah.
I mean,
They're only just getting started.
Yeah,
Cadillac's got a 12-year start.
Yeah, they got.
We'll all be gone before that.
Yeah.
Karl, do you think that your assessment would have changed if you had thrown some other cars into the mix, like the C-Class Mercedes or the IS from Lexus or anything like that?
No, I don't think I would have. I think that was really the cars that it was most likely to not be able to catch up with. I mean, the C-Class is the typical Mercedes vault-like experience, which people buy because that's what they want. It's great for that. And of course, the Audi drives very well, and it's got a beautiful interior. But in terms of what I think Cadillac most needed to do, like you guys were just saying, they most needed to change the image that they can produce an appealing looking and more importantly, an appealing driving machine. And to me, the benchmarks currently in that category are the 3 Series, and even though it's got to be redesigned, and it will be soon, even the G37 is still, that was always the one that kind of came closest to unseating the BMW. I think that was the first time someone's like, oh wow, you can buy a non-BMW and still have a great driving experience. That was the G35 when it first came out. Those were the 2 I wanted to go up against the ATS. And again, the ATS is in my opinion as good or better in driving dynamics than either of those. And then it's got other things like the Q, and I think the value for the money. You guys were talking about the suspension. I mean, that suspension system, I don't want to mispronounce it, but
MR. Just call it MR. Magneto-rheological, but MR is a whole lot easier to say.
It's a great design, as you said, and it's fabulous, and it's giving them another advantage. So this is an important product for them, and it's going to take a decade, like you say. But the journey of 1,000 steps, and if someone will at least give them a chance that otherwise wouldn't have, I think they'll be surprised.
What else have you done? Have you done anything with electric cars?
No, not really. It's funny that you're saying that, because I was just having some conversations with the guys, with someone at Fisker, so I'm going to try to get into one of those soon. But we haven't jumped into that yet. It's on our to-do list. We're still kind of small. We're still building things up. I'm getting up a couple road tests a week, and thankfully getting out on a lot of the press trips. And the guys are being great. The industry's been very helpful. A lot of the manufacturers have been great about giving me access to the vehicles, and the site's filling up with content quickly. So we just got to keep it going.
Yeah, one of the reasons I'm asking about electric cars is I just had an interview with Jim Lentz, the CEO of Toyota, Toyota Motor Sales USA, and Toyota's worried about not being able to sell enough electric cars in California to meet the zero emission vehicle mandate that the California Air Resources Board has put there. And to me, that's an astonishing statement, you know, because Toyota dominates the hybrid segment. What is
are.
it, 75%?
I can't remember the number off the top of my head.
I think
And
it's-
if they can't meet that, who else can? Nobody else is even close.
Right.
So there's going to have to be some give there.
Yeah, I don't know, Peter, what the hell's going to happen there?
I think, well, I don't know. If there's a regime change, then CAFE...
You mean a new president of the United States?
Yes.
Right? Yeah. I'm translating for the audience.
If there happens to be a regime change, I would assume that the CAFE standards are under serious attack. Mm-hmm. But I think more important, if there's a regime change in the Congress, I think California and CARB are going to come under serious attack, and that they are going to have to back down.
Well, they've already had to back down twice. I mean, this is the third generation of their ZEV mandate, and the other two failed miserably because the public would not cooperate. They just would not go out and buy the cars.
Yeah, well, that's when you have politicians in Northern California and Washington trying to tell the American people what they're going to be driving, it doesn't go well.
No, and
it never has gone well.
No, and if they're just not ready for prime time yet. It's you know.
Well, I think they are. I mean,
well,
I think the cars are good.
Their cars are good, but they are limited for. I can't own one. I would be out of juice by the time I got to downtown Detroit. I mean,
but it's but think about it though, Michelle. It's not just them. I keep pointing this out. Toyota does a brilliant job with the Prius. Mm-hmm. Awesome job. Mm-hmm. Nobody else can sell hybrids to save their lives. Right. So it's not just electric cars that aren't working. The American public has looked at hybrids and they've told all the pollsters, "Oh yeah, I really want to buy one." And then they go in the showroom and they buy something else.
And you know, there have been studies that show even if they do buy one, they don't buy one again.
That is the most telling thing.
Yes.
60% of hybrid buyers do not buy another hybrid.
Right. And you know who's the least? California.
Is
that right?
Yes, California is where they're the least.
No kidding.
Yes,
After 3 years in the Prius, they said, "I'm going to go get me a Mustang."
Well, actually, the Prius
or whatever
does have
style.
the Prius does have very high loyalty, but it's the only one there. And I think their loyalty is like 60%. Nonetheless, I find that staggering.
Mm-hmm.
That of the rest of them, 60%. They did their hybrid thing, and they're not going to do it again.
Exactly.
Well, you guys saw the recent report, right, about the combustion engine's going to be the dominant engine as long as 2050.
You know,
we
Karl,
have said that forever.
We could have saved them a bunch of money
yes,
on that survey.
We have been saying this forever. And the other thing is, they're getting so much better.
Right.
I mean, you talk to any powertrain engineer, the visionary experimental guys, and they're still saying that, we got a long way to go.
And they told us that several years ago.
Yeah,
so,
in efficiency of the ICEs.
Right.
That
Well, look, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but these, especially the 2-liter turbo engines, are awesome. I had no idea they could get this good, because I'm going back to the 80s when they first started showing up, and they were like on-off switches. There was so much turbo lag, and then it would come on like a sledgehammer. And today they're beautiful. In fact, Ford's going to put one in the town car, the MKT town car.
Well, how about the even littler engines?
The 1 liter.
Yeah, the 1 liter
or even
engine.
Smaller.
Did you drive the 1 liter engine?
The new 3-cylinder?
I have not driven it yet.
No, it's Ford.
Yeah,
it's terrific.
Yeah, 3-cylinder.
Yeah, it's 1 liter that Ford and...
I thought you said 3 Series. Then.
Yeah. Well, remember when we had Dan Kapp on the show, who was Ford Advanced Powertrain Research, and we said, how low can you go? And he's definitely under a liter. So I wouldn't be surprised if we're seeing 700, 800 cc engines in the future.
I think Formula One should go back to the 1.5 liter formula with those monster turbos with like 1,500 horsepower in qualifying.
No, I say take the turbo off and let them rev up to about 25,000 RPM.
Well, either that or let's take the new 3-cylinder 1 liter Ford and hook up with a motorcycle manufacturer.
Oh,
and tweak that 3-cylinder for a motorcycle.
Hasn't that been done? Yamaha did some venture with one of the automakers.
So Yamaha did Ford. They
Yeah,
did that first
yeah.
SHO
Yeah,
So it wouldn't, yeah, that's right.
Taurus engine.
It
right,
wouldn't be unheard of.
right.
I like that idea. As a motorcyclist, I'll take that 1 liter with 1/4, 1/5 the weight to pull around. That would be great.
Yeah.
Have you driven any of the small ones, like the Fiat engine or the Ford one?
I did. I was at the Ford Full Line last month. Michelle was there too, and we got to drive the 1 liter, and fabulous. Very weird, really, when you're getting mid-range torque and you're knowing what size the engine is under the hood. It was almost kind of surreal.
You gotta love the stuff, but yeah, I think that. And the other thing too that factors in, and I talked to Jim Lentz about this. I also got a chance to interview the new chairman of the Robert Bosch company, a guy named Werner Struth. I hope I said that right. And asked them both about what about shale oil and shale natural gas, and they both said, and these are in separate interviews, they're watching that very, very carefully. Because Jim Lentz said, if gasoline in the United States is $3.50 a gallon in 2018,
None of it
they're
makes
screwed.
sense.
They can't meet
None of it makes
CAFE because people are not going to buy the little cars that
they're
they need.
already not. The payback's just never ever going to be there.
Yeah. So it's going to get, well, I hate to say it's going to get interesting. That's almost a cop-out. It's going to hit the fan.
Yeah.
It's going to hit the fan big time.
Yeah.
Well, even if there isn't a regime change, I think there's going to be some serious pushback, that they're just waiting. Well, first of all, the government, regime change or not, is going to sell GM after the election.
Yes.
Plain as day. And this is what Akerson insists, that when that happens, it'll all be good at General Motors.
Yes. People will buy the cars again because it won't be government motors.
Yeah, they'll finally get out from under that moniker of government motors. So that's one thing that's going to happen. But I think there's going to be a pushback from the states, from Congress to the administration saying, you're not going to shove this stuff down our throats.
The only thing that could prevent that is, God forbid, there's a war.
Well, right.
And, in the Middle East, and oil prices do skyrocket.
At Traverse City, that was discussed as one of the big, big risks.
Right. But shy of that, or even once we get past that, I think there's going to be a lot more petroleum and natural gas out there than anyone expected.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't it ironic that it's like there's this pining? Could we find a way to make the prices go up? Can we find a way to make it cost more so people have to buy different cars? And I mean, to me, that always is somewhat telling as to a problem. When you're trying to tell people we've got to take this resource and make it more rare than it is, so that it's harder for people to get gas for their car before they'll buy the right cars. It's like maybe they're buying the right car then if the resource isn't really that rare and hard to get.
Yeah, well, look, everybody's been talking about raising the gas tax. I think Lee Iacocca 25 years ago was doing that. It's not going to happen. Not in the United States. It's just not going to happen. So you can't base your policy on hope. You have to base it on reality. That was profound. Let's take a commercial break. Hey, Ben, let's give a shout out to our friends at Chevrolet.
If I'm not mistaken.
It was more than a car to him. It really was his baby.
Oh, no. That's my old Chevy. Dear God.
Speaking of policies of hope, okay, let's go on.
Okay. Hey, Ben, let's go to rapid fire. Let's bring that graphic up. Okay, this is the rapid fire part of the show where we get our questions and comments from all of you out there in the audience. Scott says, this question's for Michelle Krebs. After driving the XTS, what was your opinion of the Q system? And there's more. Do you think that based on the price point, which is $50,000 to $60,000, and the target customer, 50 to 60 years old, that the Q system's too advanced for older buyers and may alienate them?
Excuse me? No, I think it's one of the better systems on the market. And come on, I'm in that age frame, and we know a little bit about technology. I really like the XTS, but my question was, where's the audience for this, unless beyond, people that already bought DTS, STS. Will that be a car that attracts a new audience? I don't think so.
Well, and you're right. However, there's still a bunch of people out there who want a big, comfortable American car to drive around. They still do. And John, you're one of them.
And I'm one of them. I like that big boulevard ride.
Yeah,
I do. I don't want to see that go away.
Ask John about the Audi lineup, and he'll say, yeah, I like that. I like the R8. I like the A7. I like the S4, but give me an A8L.
It's true. I love that AA. I like big, comfortable cars. I like small, fast ones too.
Sure.
But I really appreciate.
Well, especially for trips.
But I think
They're the best for trips.
Cadillac's going to find out that the XTS is going to do better than that.
We'll see. I mean, it's off to a pretty good start. Yeah.
What do you think, Karl? Q, is it too advanced for the customer it's going to attract?
No, I think that's a common fear, but I think Cadillac is correct in knowing that, it's like Buick, they're both figuring this out, which is there's a problem, there's a long-term business flaw in appealing to people who are past a certain age and only that certain age. And eventually that doesn't work. So they're smart with Q. It's going to appeal to people, not just who are on the leading edge of that age group. I'll just call it that, but also all the younger ones too. And that's where they've got to go. And I think it's fabulous that Cadillac once again has the best technology, in-car technology and user interface. It's a great statement that you wouldn't have believed 5 years ago.
Well, obviously Dan Akerson doesn't agree. He doesn't think his product development people are doing a good job.
Yeah.
And also, I should add that Scott, who asked the question for you, Michelle, says, my parents in that age bracket would be far too intimidated by Q.
That makes me
Scotty,
feel really
get them an iPad. Get them practicing on that.
Well, and I guess that would be one of my points. His parents may not be of that ilk, but I mean, a lot of the technology is being used by my age group. I mean, we're on Facebook, so our kids are off.
I think people only use what they want of
exactly.
it anyway. So.
Yeah, but it's look, my parents, who are significantly older than that age bracket, didn't see any need to have a computer at all, and we got them an iPad for Christmas a couple of years ago. You can't pry it out of their hands.
Well, exactly.
They love that thing.
If it's intuitive,
right? Right.
I think that's the biggest thing.
Mike DeWhite says GM needs at least one high-efficiency, low-cost four-cylinder. They got it. They've got that.
Several. They've got the Sonic, the Cruise.
And he says also need a DCT or CVT for its small cars.
Yeah.
That's the official
CVTs have to be done right if they can be.
Yeah, if they can be.
Yeah.
Karl, what do you think?
No, I think a well done. It's like the internal combustion engine. Its death has been greatly exaggerated, as you were saying. Same thing with the traditional transmission. If it keeps getting more efficient and smoother as they keep getting, then you don't have to replace them with the CVT.
Hey, here's the thing that stunned me. because Cadillac claims that the ATS is 146 pounds lighter than a BMW 3 Series. So I believe him, but, it's like Reagan, trust but verify. So I go and look up at the BMW site, what's the weight, and Cadillac's got it right. And I was stunned to see that the automatic transmission cars are lighter than the manual transmission cars. Someone's got to explain that one to me.
At BMW or Cadillac?
At both. Automatic transmissions. And when you look at the EPA stuff, in a lot of cases, it's a wash.
It is a wash.
Usually the manual's better in the city and the automatic's better on the highway. And you look at the combined and they're the same. It's extraordinary. And these are not DCTs. I'm talking about, your regular torque converter transmissions.
The tranny in that ATS is fabulous for all those reasons. It's the automatic on the V6. It's light and it's totally smooth, even though it's a torque converter. It feels like a DCT because it rev matches when you downshift it, and
which is so cool. That is so cool to have an automatic blip the throttle for you as it downshifts. Let's see. Fox Body Prius has got one for you, Peter. Were you surprised at the Viper's finish at Mid-Ohio?
No.
And tell us what happened, because I don't even know about
I think
this.
one of them finished 10th in GT. They were 3 seconds off the pace, 3 to 3.5. And, you know, we're talking about currently the most competitive road racing in the world right now is ALMS GT. It is the most competitive, factory-supported, cutthroat racing. So I thought the Vipers acquitted themselves well, but it's going to be a while before they are really competing for, you know, top 5 positions in
Sure,
qualifying.
because the teams they're going against are
I mean, these are front line.
really good.
Yeah, so I thought they acquitted themselves well, but it's going to be a slog because you're talking about the most hotly contested form of road racing in the world right now.
George from Brooklyn says, has anyone considered making an ATS Coupe? Didn't we ask Ed Wilburn about that last week?
You know, I've seen the ATS Coupe, so it's, you know, when they do it, 2 years from now or whatever they do it, it's quite handsome.
Hey, here's Roaster Jack in Traverse City.
Yay,
Yeah.
Roaster Jack. He said he's going to send us a new shipment of coffee one of these days.
He says, how about Elon as a guest? I think he means Elon Musk, the head of Tesla. He says, I'd like to see how much Peter can make him squirm.
I'd like to see Elon.
He says, congrats and thanks for the Design Center episode. So yeah, no, we like that. And to your point, he says he'll send us some new coffee. He also asks, has anyone heard anything new about the OPOC engine? You know, the Eco Motors engine.
You know, I thought I heard something about their affiliating with a truck company.
No, I just saw a release last week. They just raised like another.
Right.
I shouldn't say because I can't remember exactly.
$3 billion?
No. It was like $36 million.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So they keep getting funding. So that tells me there are people and companies out there that see promise in that engine.
See, if I was Randy Bernard and I was running IndyCar, I would allow OPOC to bring a motor to the speedway.
And put it in the Delta Wing.
And yeah, put it in the Delta Wing or whatever. Just say, okay, yeah, you can get a run. It'll blow up, but that's fine.
Yeah. Remember, we had Peter Hoffbauer on the show, I think 3 years ago, talking about the OPOC engine.
And we had Don Runkle, too.
And we had Runkle here, too. So we've probably covered that engine more than just about anybody. In fact, Ben's got it up on the screen right now. It's, opposed piston, opposed cylinder, and half the parts of a typical engine with the same output, which is amazing. Roaster Jack also asks about Covetic aluminum. Remember, we had Sandy Monroe on here. We're going to have to get Sandy back. I need an update on what the heck's happening with that aluminum.
Mr. Wizard.
Yeah, right.
We should mention to check out Jack's site, greatnoroko.com, and order some fine coffee.
Yeah, it is. Mitch W. says, what does it mean that Mark LaNave is now with Ford?
Mark LaNave isn't technically with Ford. He's with Ford's ad agency.
Team Detroit.
There's been some speculation now that Joel's gone, that GM will go back after Mark. I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
I think there's more to Mark's appointment than initially indicated. And
well, one of my sources said it's a way for Ford to have a backup plan in case, for whatever reason, if they ever lost Jim Farley.
I don't know about that. I would think the speculation would probably be more accurate that if there is a new head of Lincoln, that maybe they would move Mark over. But this is all speculation.
Mm-hmm.
Well, remember, there's been a bunch of GM people that have been brought in by Ford, so.
Yeah.
Or at least to their agency.
Yes.
People with Cadillac experience, by the way.
Yes.
Well, and also 2 former vice presidents of communication, Chris Pruce and Tom Kowaleski are over there.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, Mitch W. also says, why does Bob Lutz keep saying that Dan Akerson is doing a great job?
I really don't know. Well, I do know, but I think I'll just leave it.
Yeah. Right. Scotty in Cleveland says, Peter, how was the ride in the Mako Shark last week?
Well, it was brief, but boy, I got to tell you, it was all I could do to start bawling.
What I liked was, I don't know if you
literally 50 years.
Yeah, between when you first rode in it
with Mitchell and Ed Welburn. I'm the only guy on the planet who rode with the 2 GM designers in that car.
You know, I got to tell you, I went back and watched that show. I rarely go back and watch shows. I mean, what the hell? I'm in the show.
Yeah.
I got sucked into that show. I loved that thing because there were parts where you and Ed went off talking that, you know, because I was going to other parts in the design center to be ready when you came back out. So I missed that part of the conversation. But the camera view of you guys getting in the Mako Shark, pulling out, and as soon as he gets about, here it is up on the screen too, as soon as he gets about 10 feet out the door, he nailed it. And the thing not only started turning the wheels, it started fishtailing off. And that's how the show ended. It was just really cool.
Yeah, that was a special moment.
And Scotty also wants to know, did anyone get a glimpse of any future product after the cameras were turned off? No.
No, but we've all seen some stuff. I mean, you know, they're going to show the new Corvette in Detroit. I hope they don't have a preview of it until like the night before. I really hope they can keep a lid on it. You know,
Make it a real surprise.
yeah.
In fact, I would even say don't even do it the night before.
Oh,
do it at the show.
Yeah, do it when you're going to do it. But
And take command.
yeah, don't bring anyone under the tent unless it's me and you.
Yeah.
And don't do any of that pre-hand wringing or let's let so and so. No, just show it. You know, for everybody. That's what they did with the Camaro concept.
How
Instead of
is
the
that?
Cadillac
How is
ones,
the
remember
timing
those?
on that? How's the timing on that going to compare with the Mustang? The next Mustang, is that the same show? I was trying to remember.
No, I don't think the new the Mustang concept will not be at Detroit. It will be at LA, the earliest, but I think it'll be
LA next year.
Yeah, I think realistically it'll be Detroit in 2014.
Okay, so the two won't be competing with each other. That'd be
No.
quite a show if they both showed up at the same.
Yeah,
same
it would
show.
be a show.
Oh, no kidding. Hey, Ben, I see we got a phone call here. Let's bring that in.
There you go. Yeah, the GM thing's still carrying on. I don't know why they didn't make Opel their global brand years ago. I don't know. Most of their capex was locked into development, and they're getting pennies on the dollar for it globally. I just don't understand their global policy. I mean, we deal with a lot of things in Europe, and we don't seem to have that much problems. But anyway, and their inventory, it's real easy. For what you pay more for GM products than the competitors. You know, for what you have to pay for what you get, they're just not competitive. Anyway, thanks.
Oh, that's interesting. Do you think GM has a pricing problem with its products, Michelle?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Carl, do you see that at all?
No, I feel like the value that's packed in for instance, again, the ATS, I did a breakdown of that compared to the BMW, and I think there were some people on Beamer Fest who were talking about it and all, and I think that people were expecting maybe even more of an advantage for BMW or for Cadillac against BMW, but they do, I think, have an advantage in terms of what you pay and what you get. Now, some would say, well, they're going to have to because of where they're coming from, but no, and the same thing on the non-premium brands too. The Cruise, you know, the Traverse, and all their things are well priced in my opinion.
But I do agree with them that years ago they should have made Opel their global brand, and or at least have brought it to the U.S. You know, they brought individual models, which did fairly well.
I owned one.
Which one
I
did you
owned
have?
An Opel Kadett years ago.
First car I ever drove was an Opel Kadett
And I bought
when I
it
was
at-
13 years old.
My
Maybe
first car
12.
was a '68 Opel Rally.
No kidding. But yeah, then I don't know. The dollar got kaflooey with the German mark, and then remember they had Isuzu building a car,
Yes.
and they branded it as an Opel by Isuzu, sold in Buick stores.
Just a nightmare, you know. Just,
The madness. Rum and Coke is asking, where are you and the fabulous Hall brothers going to be stationed for the Dream Cruise? And that's a great segue for us to promote. Next week, we will be at the Dream Cruise on Woodward Avenue. I don't think Bob Hall is going to make it in from California for
no,
that
it's
show.
just Jim.
Jim Hall will be there. And we'll be where we were last year, which was 13 in Woodward.
Yeah.
And should be a good show.
With the Mopar display.
DJ in Milwaukee asks, how will the USA pay for roads if the gas tax isn't increased and hasn't been increased since 1991?
That's a good question.
We were just talking about that.
Right.
There's probably going to have to be a national I mean, right on the pump, you're paying 30 cents a gallon to fix your roads because something's got to give.
Right.
It's like Beirut out there. It's like Beirut. I was driving through Beverly Hills last year, and I couldn't believe it. I was like, am I in a third? No, wait, I'm in the Beverly Hills city limits right now. And there was just funny the timing on this. It was 2 nights ago, I guess. The 405 was locked up, and this time it was because there was a hole causing flat tires right at the top of the Sepulveda Pass, and it had 20 cars pulled over at the side because this hole just developed instantly, and nobody saw it, and cars were hitting it, blowing tires, and having to pull immediately over. So it's a mess out here, and they don't even have the excuse of having winters like in Detroit or Denver where I grew up. So when I see bad roads out here, it's like, you guys, this is the best climate for roads, and they're still a mess. What's going on?
Yeah, we got to spend more. In fact, the governor of our state here in Michigan has come out and said we have to spend $1.4 billion more a year on top of what we're spending just to try to get them back in some reasonable amount of shape.
What's going on? It's not keeping up. It's just not keeping up.
Right.
So that's going to face future administrations. I mean, there's going to have to be a serious increase in national gas. I mean, a huge gas tax.
And we haven't even talked about bridges. I mean, when bridges start falling down and people get killed, we've got to sell the public on the idea that this isn't going in the big piggy bank. This is going to fix your roads and bridges.
That you are on every day.
And I think people would support that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well,
in this environment?
Should really be $1 a gallon if you want to get out in front of this, fund this for the next 30 years. Mm-hmm. But, what president's going to have a fireside chat and say, guess what? Your gas is going to go up $1 tomorrow because if you don't, we're all going to be riding bicycles around craters.
Well, you phase it in. You say it's going to go up $1 over the next 5 years or whatever it is. So
25 cents a year?
Yeah, something like that. Right.
Something's got to give.
Yeah, it does.
I mean, when Karl was talking about in California, and, that's kind of shocking because around here we're kind of used to it. I mean, let's face it, it's bad. So when we get to go to other states, we're kind of like, oh, the roads are going to be good. But when you encounter it in California, it's freaky.
Right.
Because traditionally, I mean, that's like nirvana. But when you encounter it out there, it's shocking.
That's exactly right. That's what I couldn't believe it. I mean, the roads in Denver, I watched them crumble in the winters, and they had to rebuild them and all. And certainly Detroit has there's reasons for the roads to suffer out there. But out here, when I first moved here 20 years ago, the roads were all perfect, and they're as bad as they are in places that have real weather. So that's when I knew that's how you know something's wrong.
Yeah.
Well, we don't do ourselves any favor. This is still true, right? We allow the heaviest trucks in the nation in Michigan.
That's correct.
Double any other state.
That's right. I think there's 1 or 2 other states that have something similar. But by and large, we allow trucks that are twice as heavy as just about anywhere else.
Yeah.
Okay, Phil Hopewell has written in to say, congratulations to Michelle on winning the Autoline After Hours Automotive Draft. So, congrats
Yay.
for that. And then he goes on to say, now that Honda has shown its redesigned 2013 Accord, can we finally declare that there is no one left with a pulse in the Honda design department? The redesigned Accord is so boring, it makes the Camry look like a swoopy cutting-edge design. And he says, and this is coming from someone who's owned several Civics.
This is going to be an interesting fall because you've got the really stylish Fusion coming out. That midsize market is hot already. I mean, the
Red
increase,
hot.
Fusion, the Altima,
exactly.
the Camry.
I mean, everything. And I think it is going to be a big question whether Accord does all that well.
Karl, what'd you make of those pictures of the new Accord?
Well, I was like, which one's the new one again? No, I mean, yeah, it's unfortunate because you really, the first new car I ever purchased was a Honda product. It was a Honda Odyssey back in 2000, and I'm as big a fan of the company as there is out there, and I'm a little worried. It's like, guys, come on, they've still got solid product. There's no denying it, but everyone's got solid product, as everyone says. What we're left with now are things like dealer experience and styling. That's all that's really left. Everything, all the cars are relatively good. They're all safe. They're all dependable. They've all got a lot of great features. You can't pull people in by saying things like, oh, we have a great dependability score. You got to pull them in because you have something that stands out from the crowd. And the Fusion, as you guys were saying, I mean, Michelle's right. That's the red hot car this year in that category. And it's going to take a lot to compete with that car. And you can't play it safe. You can't have people wondering which one's the new one and which one's the old one.
I don't think the American consumer is prepared for how radical that Fusion's going to look on the road. I mean,
agreed.
For a mainstream car.
Yeah, you're going to have a mainstream car that looks like an Aston Martin practically.
But I think that the American public's ready for something
Yeah, they
new.
are.
I mean, look at what the Sonata did in that segment. I mean, and that's not like over the top styling, but it was just enough of styling that it captured some attention.
I actually think the Elantra is really the best looking Hyundai product.
That's the best. That's the best execution of that design.
Yeah, it just everything about the design just comes together.
Well,
in the
look what
Elantra.
that did to that market.
Yeah.
It certainly has been well accepted too.
Although they got to be a bit careful. I'm not a fan of the grille on the Veloster.
No, I'm not
No.
either.
No.
That's a grill too far.
Yeah, everything about the Veloster is cool, but dead on front, wow.
Yeah.
Run for the hills.
But remember, that's a total niche product. I mean, they can't even. They're so limited on production on that car that they can just hit. They're going to hit the people who want this kind of bizarre, weird-looking little sporty car, and so they could go a little crazy on styling, and they're still
They
going to be
can't
fun.
make enough
I
of
know,
those.
but I think if they fixed the grill on that thing, it may not be so niche. I think it could attract a whole lot more people.
They can't make it more of anyway. So
Yeah, they're limited.
But one thing I'd go back and I disagree with Phil Hopewell. I'll bet if you go to Honda Design, the designers, they're probably not that happy.
they're
with this
not
car.
that happy. I've heard internally, no, they're not happy with the
and
products.
look, you know,
that they're-
2 years ago, we would have been saying the same thing about Toyota design. Boy, don't those guys get it? You know, they just come out with bland, 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 and then bang! I'm sounding like a broken record again, but that LFLC concept car for Lexus and the new Avalon are dynamite. That's why I picked Kevin Hunter as my designer for my Dymaxion motors in the fantasy draft.
But it's all about leadership.
It is, exactly. And when you see ugly cars, almost invariably, that's management's decision. That's not the design staff's decision, almost invariably. So that's the one thing I disagree, Phil. I'll bet you if you went to Honda Design and said, guys, let it rip, go for it, that they'd kick out great
I
designs.
think they're probably a depressed group.
Well, the new concept for the NSX. It's nice.
Exactly. I
Yeah,
was
it has
just
some
going to say,
overtones of other cars, other supercars, but it's cool.
no, it's in there. You're right. You know, Peter, they've got the capability. It's not
Yeah.
like they can't do it. You guys are right. Somebody's holding things back.
They're not
Somebody's
unleashed.
scared. Yeah.
I mean, Honda used to be my favorite Asian car company by far. I mean, they were the
too.
motor company. They raced in Grand Prix racing. Everything.
Their
revol-
motorcycles, their power products,
Yeah,
everything.
it wasn't called the motor company for nothing, and they did interesting little things with their cars and all that. And then I think they just went too mainstream. You know, they
Too
just
mainstream, and then there was a lot of cost cutting going on, as we saw with Civic and
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, last question. Nathan says, I think the engine options for the Verano and Cruze should be switched. Since the Verano is more upmarket, wouldn't that help offset the cost of the diesel? Because the Cruze is going to get a diesel next year. He says that the 2-liter turbo really did wonders for the Cobalt. Would it do the same for the Cruze? I think he meant for the Verano. Anyway, look, Chevrolet and General Motors in general is experimenting with the diesel. They're going to put the diesel Cruze out there next year and see how it sells.
and it's a cafe play too.
And it's a cafe play, but it's a stick the toe in the water. Can we really sell diesels? Yeah, the Germans can, but can we, is what GM is thinking. I'll tell you, if that diesel sells anywhere near reasonably good, everyone's going to
And by the way, it's great. I did drive that last spring, I think it was. And,
Oh, yeah?
it was the European version, but, you know, pretty darn close. So it was, it's pretty terrific.
Karl, comments on diesels?
Seems to be the ever lasting question that we can't seem to get answered here. But we're seeing increased momentum and acceptance. Certainly, like you say, the Germans are getting it. I don't think Volkswagen can keep up with the demand on the GTI and the Golf, or not the GTI, but the Golf and the Jetta. That's the one I would get, by the way. If I was buying a new Jetta, I'd get a Sportwagen TDI. So
would all of us journalists.
And if you could,
Yeah.
can't seem to make them fast enough.
But it's the U.S. Like you say, and it would be nice to see that dam break. It'd be nice to see somebody on the domestic side give it a try, succeed, and watch everyone else kind of jump on board, because I think that's what would happen.
Well, it's interesting too. Toyota recently signed an agreement with BMW to get diesel engines. Now that's mainly for Europe, but again, going back to my conversation with Jim Lentz, he said they're absolutely watching the U.S. market, and if things like the Cruise diesel really start to sell, they're going to be fast followers.
Yeah.
And that from the hybrid company.
I had an interesting conversation with my daughter, who's early 20s, and the VW ad where the guys get in and they listen to the Spanish tapes and then they get back out of it. She so got that's what diesel engines are all about, that I think Volkswagen did a great job on
Before we close the show, John, I have a special announcement. An average human being forgets 80% of what he or she learns every day, so the chances are you will probably not even remember this show.
What show?
No, you'll just remember 20% of it.
Yeah.
The good 20%.
Right, the good 20%.
Hey, Karl, it's been great having you here with us tonight.
Hey, thanks for having me on, John. It's fun. You guys seem to have a good time, and I feel lucky to be a part of it.
And that's what, TotalCarScore.com.
Yep, Total Car Score. We're working. We seem to be fighting the good fight. Things are moving in the right direction. We just got to keep plugging.
Cool, thanks.
Cool.
And Michelle,
Thanks, guys.
great having you here.
Oh, it's fun.
Even though it's your first time, aside from the special one for the fantasy draft.
Did I win tonight?
You're a winner. And Peter, as always.
John, thanks. Good
Yeah.
to see you.
And keep watching, folks. We'll be at the Dream Cruise next week. We have Al Oppenheiser, the chief engineer on the Zl1 Camaro, coming the week after that. And then we've got the chief engineer from the Toyota Avalon coming on. That's going to be a good show as well. But for now, we're signing off.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone, your journey, our passion. And by Chevrolet, Chevy runs deep.
Visit our website, Autoline.tv, where you can watch us live Thursday nights at 6 p.m. Eastern. Get your daily news fix with Autoline Daily and in-depth analysis and interviews with Autoline This Week. There is all that and much more at Autoline.tv.